Welcome, this is Jim, host of the Faith Influencer podcast, where we're going to dive into discussions on faith's role in everyday life, from navigating blended families to overcoming challenges. I'm a husband, a father, a Bible teacher, an advocate for applying faith to everyday life. So tune in as I share personal stories, valuable insights, and practical wisdom. Welcome back to Faith Influencer Podcast. I'm always excited that you're here. Hey, if you're watching this on YouTube, do me a favor and like the video. That helps us a lot. If you are seeing this on any other podcast platform, follow us. None of that hurts you, but it does help us, and so we appreciate that. So this is Jim Cunningham, and I am with you again to talk about a subject that was brought up in some of the comments. That's one of the things I enjoy doing. Is we've done this podcast long enough now that we have a lot of responses, some good, some not so good, some are happy about what we're talking about, and some are a little angry about what we're talking about, all good. But in the midst of that, I find pieces of questions that people are asking that I think that we should answer, and today is one of those days. So we're going to talk about this subject. Should I get remarried? Should I marry again? Now, there have been so many studies done on this subject that it's easy to navigate our way. But remember, this is Faith Influencer, and I keep reminding you of that because I'm not trying to present to you what the world says or what everyone else says. I think there is a direction that we get from God's Word. There's a Christian path that we try to follow. And so that's going to be the direction I go in this. Does God say anything about this? Well, surprisingly, He does, and we're going to talk about it. Now, I know why so many of you have said to me that you've been divorced for a while and you just don't know if you want to get married again because divorce was so painful. So let's talk about that as well. So as we look at the studies, it's amazing to me the amount of people who get divorced after 50. I maybe could understand it if they get divorced, if they get married young and they divorce young because it wasn't what they thought. The happily ever after wasn't there. But those who spent 20 years together or longer and then get a divorce, the percentage of divorces in that age group are very high. Is that surprising to you? Kind of is to me after they've put in that much time. Or maybe is it for some of you, and respond to this, I'd like to see what you say. Maybe for some of you, it's because you had some things that would bind you together, like raising children. The children were still at home. That's what I hear from some people. We were committed to that. We weren't close, but yet we had our children. And once the children got older and they left the house, then there wasn't anything to tie us together. So that's why we got a divorce at a later age. That's what some of you say. So let's walk through this. And I think this is going to be helpful for you today. And as we walk through it, I'm going to share with you one of the most important studies ever done on the subject of happiness as it relates to this. And you'll get that at the end. So here's what some say. Some say the benefits of being single now, after I've been married and engaged all of these years, the benefit of being single is too great to ever think about getting married. Some of you feel that way. Some of you are married and don't want to be married now, and that's how you think. You think, oh man, if I just got rid of my partner and I could be single and do what I wanted, I'd be happy. You think so? Is that what studies show? Well, actually, it's not what studies show, but here's the thinking. If I'm single, then I've got freedom. If I'm single, then I have all the time to myself that I don't have now. If I'm single, I don't have any commitments. I can go when I want. I can do what I want. I can run around with my friends and not be questioned by you. I can have control over my own finances. I have all of these things if I could be single again. Or I'm going to stay single because I want all of those things. How realistic is that? I wonder if some of you are thinking that. We're going to talk about it. Here's what men say. I speak more to men's groups, and I have the ear of a lot of men outside of this podcast, and here's what they say. Men who have divorced are asking these three things. One, should I stay single? That's a question. Two, should I date around to find somebody? Or three, should I just give in and settle down? That's what men are asking. I'm going to say to many of you, at one time you wanted to be married. You wanted to. Why? Why did you want to be married? Because you wanted to have that close relationship with someone. You want to have that commitment with someone. You wanted to have children together. Some of you have remarried and you've blended your families because you still want that. But then when you abandon that and you're ready to move on, you're like, I am going to stay single for all the reasons I've already mentioned. I'm going to say to you, I'm going to call foul on that. I'm going to say, I don't believe most of that, if that's your line of thinking. I'm going to say you're saying that, I think, from my experience, because there's something underlying that's keeping you from entering into another commitment. And usually that falls under the category of fear. Some of you don't want to do this again because you're fearful of going through it again. So you make some big mistakes. You know who make the biggest mistakes? People who have been married and divorced and now they're single. They make the biggest mistakes. I know this for a fact because I see it all over the place. Even some of my own family have gone down this path and they wish they could go back. So here's what happens. It's like, I'm single now, but I still have some of the same desires I had when I was married. And so I'm going to satisfy those desires. So here's what people do. They say, well, one, I'm just going to sleep around. I literally had one guy say to this to me. Okay, this isn't coming from me. I had someone say this to me. I want to give that caveat. He said, listen, I'm a rooster and there are a lot of hens out there. That's the way God made it. Well, that's kind of stupid because you're not in a barnyard. That's not how God made it for us. So some guys and ladies too say, I'm just going to sleep around. I'm going to enjoy sex with whoever I want to enjoy sex with. I'm not going to share that commitment. I'm going to have the freedom to do. I don't have to just be with one person now for the rest of my life. And I'm set free. Listen, that's not going to work out for you. That's not the way God made it. You think that's going to work out where you can just play around with whoever you want to play around with, and that's going to be a lifestyle for you? No, that's going to be a path to destruction for you. What about this? What about this? Some people say, well, I don't want to make a mistake, so we're just going to live together for as long as it takes. And if we ever decide that we want to deepen that commitment to marriage, then we'll do it. What about that? Same problem. When people live together, and if you disagree with this, I want to hear it. Some of you say, we just want to live together, and as a result, we'll know if we're right for each other. You know what you're really saying? You're really saying, let's bring our households together, but let's hold off on any commitment. Well, what kind of relationship is that? One of the wonderful things about marriage is this amazing commitment. Commitment is not a bad word. Commitment is not something we're avoiding. Commitment in a relationship and in a marriage is one of the sweetest things about it. So let's maybe change our view. Here's what a lady said to me. I want to read it to you. She said, yep, I love marriage. I'm quoting her. She said, yep, I love marriage. First one didn't work and turned me off to ever getting remarried. But then she went on to say, but deep down, I love married life. She said, having a partner who was a best friend and sharing life, I miss that. That's probably more realistic. We cover it with all of the things that look good, but that's probably more realistic. So I think I can help you here. I think I can help you if you're trying to decide, should I remarry or should I not? And so let me walk you down this path. You cannot allow the pain of divorce, of going through that, and it's very painful, and I know because I've been there. That's why we're doing this blended family podcast, so I can help blended families because I've been through that. You cannot allow the pain of divorce to cloud what you really want deep down. Now, it may have been a long time ago that you were married, and what you want deep down really is clouded, but at one time you wanted that. And so many people allow fear to get in the way of that. I should be single or should I get married? Does the Bible say anything about it? Yes. So let's talk about it. So Paul, in the book of 1 Corinthians, talks about this gift that he had. And he recognized that not everybody had this gift. This was a gift that was given to him by God, he said. And not everybody had this gift. Some people had a different gift. He called his gift the gift of singleness. That's how he describes it. He said, I have been given the gift of singleness. How do you know if you've been given the gift of singleness? Well, we don't have to guess at it because it's actually described in the Bible. And here's what Paul said. Well, he said, first of all, the gift of singleness allows me to be single-minded. It allows me to be focused on what God has called me to do. He said, because I'm single, I'm not pulled to this side, or I'm not pulled to that side, or I don't have, and he called them the worries of the world. He's not saying relationship was a worry in the sense that we think of worry. He's just saying that it's a commitment that I have, which means I can't fully commit myself to this. So Paul said, I'm gifted to be single because my desire is to have one focus in my life. That's one. The second thing that he said, I know that I'm gifted to be single because I don't struggle with lust. I don't struggle with that physical, sexual appetite, and that's not a struggle. So Paul said there is a gift of singleness, and maybe you have the gift. I don't think many people have the gift of singleness. I think that most people have the gift of being married. So what is that gift? That gift is just the opposite. That gift is that I want that relationship. I want that person. And I have sexual desires. I feel that. And so that is the person who should remarry. So it's just that simple. You can narrow it down to that. Now, finding the right person to enter in that relationship, that's a whole different subject. We've talked about that before. I want to say one thing about it before I get to this study that I promised you I would get to. The idea that you're going to go find someone is not how you find someone. The idea that I'm going to go look for someone, that's not where it's going to happen. Here's the way the Bible says, he that finds a wife finds a good thing. That's how the book of Proverbs says. And that word finds a wife means that you're living your life. You're going to work. If you're a parent, you're raising your kids as a single mother or a single father. And while you're living for God, you're going to church. You're doing the things that you're doing. While you're living your life, God will send the right person across your path. That's literally what that passage means. So never think that I'm going to get married, so I got to go find someone. That's not going to work. What you think is I'm going to do what's right and I'm going to live my life, and watch what God does. Watch how God brings that right person across my path. That's what will happen. That's the direction that I want you to take. Now, can I be happy and be single? Well, yeah. Studies show that elderly men, I read this the other day, that elderly men who have been married 50, 60 years and their spouse died in their old age, remained happy after that without remarrying if they had good relationships with other people, if they had close relationships. So listen to this. I've never been to the redwood forest, but I've seen lots of pictures of it. And we're talking about giant redwoods. We're talking about the tallest trees in the world. We're talking about hundreds of feet in the air. Do you know how deep their roots are? Some of you thinking, oh man, they must be really deep. No, the roots of a redwood tree go down about 5 feet. That is it. They're about 5 feet deep. So physics tells us there's no way that a tree that is that big and goes hundreds of feet in the air can stand there for 100 years with a root system that only goes 5 feet into the earth. How can that be? Because you'll always find a redwood in a forest of other redwoods. You're already ahead of me, aren't you? What a redwood does is their root system intertwines with all of the other root systems in the forest. And in those relationships, there is the strength that it can stand. So, the longest study ever done on happiness, it was done by George Valiant and Robert Waldinger. And this was the longest ongoing study on what they called what makes a good life. So I'm going to say all of what I'm about to show you is amazing, with one exception. They didn't include your relationship with the Lord, and I'm going to put that as at the top, so just know that. What makes a good life? And this is what they entitled the study, Lessons from the Longest Study on Happiness. This is fascinating. Lessons from the longest study on happiness. As a matter of fact, I would encourage you to go to the TED Talk of Robert Waldinger, and they have over 40 million views on this TED Talk on happiness. But I'm going to give you a synopsis of it right now. So they divided it into two categories. One category was happy, well. The other was sad, sick. So either you're in the category of happy and well or sad and sick. They acknowledged that there were some uncontrollables that you can't do anything about in this study. You can't control where you were born. I mean, if someone was born in Afghanistan, could be an issue. Uncontrollable. You can't control if you're raised in a happy family or not. Uncontrollable. So we're not talking about the uncontrollables, and they recognize that there were some. But here are the controllables, and I'm going to walk through them quickly. For a happy, well life, here are the things on the longest study ever done on happiness, okay? Are you ready? Not what you think. Here we go. Number one, smoking. Don't do it. In this study, they saw that people who smoked ongoing were in the long run not happy. Don't do it. Quit. Longest study of happiness, smokers aren't. Number two, drinking. They didn't say don't drink socially. They said on the study that showed this, that if there was alcohol abuse, it was one of the biggest factors of a sad, sick life. Alcohol abuse. If you abuse alcohol, then you can guarantee you're going to walk down this path of a sad, sick life. I have seen that in my own family with a grandfather. It's a sad, sick life that hurts so many people. Stop, get help. Number three, healthy body weight. I'm glad that was in their study because some of you got so mad at me when I talked about body weight. Now, I was talking to females in particular because you get more angry about that. Guys don't tend to get angry about that if I call them fat, but women do. So we've already dealt with that, and I don't want to go there again. But I'm so glad in the study on happiness that a healthy body weight is an indicator of a happy, well life. So I'm not talking about yo-yo diets. They weren't talking about anything but eating moderate. Here's number four, exercise. That was the other indicator of a healthy life. It doesn't mean all out exercise. If you do that, that's good, but at least staying active. And as a matter of fact, studies now have shown, and they have shown that when they say stay active, there's hardly anything better than just walking briskly. So incorporate that several times a day or a week. Now, here's the next one, adaptive coping style. Now, remember, this is the longest study, and they said that happy people have an adaptive coping style. Do you know what that means? It means that they confront problems directly. It means that they don't push them to the side. They don't put them under the rug. They don't act like they're not there. It's when a problem comes, they cope with it and address it directly and right then. That was an indicator of a happy life. I get that. I get that if someone allows it just to go on, that it begins to kind of eat at you. It doesn't go away just because you're ignoring it. It's still there. So an adaptive coping style. That's interesting. Here's the next one, number 6, education. Education was an indicator of a happy life, but some of you are thinking, well, I went to school. No, that's not what we're talking about. We're not talking about going to school. We're not talking about going to college. That's not the kind of education they were talking about. They described it as an ongoing lifestyle of learning, lifelong learning. I'm always learning. I listen to podcasts myself. I read books. I'm always learning. I'm always bringing in content. And you know why that makes people happy? Because it keeps their mind sharp and it keeps their mind active. And especially as you get older. All right, the last thing, here it is. The last indicator and the biggest indicator. I wonder if you know what it is before I tell you. The last indicator of a happy life. Remember our whole subject, should I remarry? Should I not? Should I stay single? What should I do? The biggest indicator of a happy life are stable, long-term relationships. That's the biggest indicator. Now, I'm going to acknowledge that they weren't always talking about marriage when they said that. They were talking about stable relationships. But in that study, at the top of the list was a stable marriage. A stable marriage was one of the greatest indicators of lifelong happiness. So I'm going to answer the question for you. Should I remarry? Studies show that a commitment to another person in a stable relationship leads to a happy life. That is an indicator of a happy life. The opposite is, I'm going to stay single, uncommitted, do what I want, when I want. That selfish mindset does not lead to ongoing happiness. It's only temporary. So, work on your relationships. Who do you have that you have close relationships with? I'm going to show you in a visual as we close today. Here I am, and if I'm struggling, if there are issues, then this is a problem. It's easy for me to fall. But if I have close relationships, then this is what happens. This is what happens when you have relationships with people that you're close to. That leads to a happy life. So, there's my answer to your question. Yes, I think you should consider remarrying, but allow God to bring the right person across your path. I think that a committed relationship is a happy life. Thanks for joining us. I'm excited to hear about what you think about what we've talked about, and we'll see you next time. This is Jim Cunningham on Faith Influencer Podcast.